Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess you're following, or at least seeing the signals that I post. So I have for quite some time obviously been talking about Bitcoin reaching the 9800K region. We did reach that. If we zoom in a little bit on the daily, um, we can see we've had some good reaction off of it. We have some empty wicks within the 98, 99 K spot that we were looking at, and obviously this is kind of our entry point for the Bitcoin long, um, which is hopefully projected to take us to 150K. Um, but obviously, there's still technically no guarantee that we have formed a low. Um, Personally, I'm still under the impression that even if we get like a bounce up to like 105 to 110, maybe even like 112, just around here, this is resistance for um, Bitcoin at the moment. So I think even if we get a bounce a few $1,000s above where we are at the moment, I still personally think that we will revisit um, the 98, 99K area, possibly even lower, um, in the coming weeks, if not days. Um, we've had obviously a good reaction from a lot of alts. So obviously Bitcoin dominance has settled down a little bit. Alts have had some time to do their B wave rallies, and I'll probably kind of explain that a little bit more when we take a look at some other alts. Um, but yeah, Bitcoin at the moment is looking okay, but I can't particularly see a lot of strength at the moment. Um, you know, Bulls and Bears are obviously fighting. It was expected that we were going to spend some time around this 100K area. I don't expect, a massive breakout to the upside or a massive breakout to the downside for possibly, a few days. And also, it's the weekend, so there's less likelihood of seeing that. What is important to note, of course, is that we have this yellow trend line that, if I just switch to the weekly, and sorry, the laptop is still a little bit janky, but if I switch to the weekly and look at this from quite a high level point of view, you can see that this weekly trend line has been quite important for quite some time. It goes all the way down here, where we kind of measure where we've had these candle wicks touch this support. There's essentially two lines of support to the downside, two trend lines anyway. So one of them is this yellow trend line, and the other one is this pink trend line. This pink trend line literally goes all the way to the bottom to like $17,000, basically where Bitcoin started to begin the turn to the upside for its bull run. Now, I still kind of think that this looks incomplete to the upside. What I do think we had is, I think we had like the main initial move. So we had like a wave one to the upside, wave two correction, and then this is possibly the third wave that we had, and the third wave that we had is in an ABC structure. Then we had this fourth wave correction, which took us all the way down to around 74, 75K. And now I believe that we're in the final cycle part of Bitcoin's bull market. So, I think we personally can see this as an ABC move to the upside to complete that final fifth wave. If that is the case, then obviously I've given some good predictions of where I think Bitcoin is possibly going to top. I think it's going to be around 150, 160K, maybe even 170K at a push. But that is obviously on the basis that we are holding this kind of $93,000 level. I think if Bitcoin doesn't manage to hold that 90K region, then I think that's pretty much it. I think Bitcoin, it would be safe to say that Bitcoin has topped for this bull market. I'm looking at it on the weekly. I mean, if we look at the weekly RSI, right, we look at March 2024. When we reached that 70K zone, that was obviously all-time high. We can see that the RSI was basically super overbought. Then obviously when we made another high here at around 100K, but the RSI on the weekly, you can see, actually wasn't as high as the previous value. Okay, so the RSI here was oversold, massively oversold. Here we weren't as oversold, but we obviously made a new high. Then obviously when we made the 126K high, this was our RSI. So if you look at it logically, sorry, PC is still a bit janky, so bear with me. If you look at it logically, you can see the weekly RSI, we have some bearish divergence, right? And this bearish divergence is obviously spanning over a year and a half. Now, I do think that we are coming to some kind of end at some point. I've mentioned this multiple times, to be obviously cautious that there is obviously a possibility that we have topped. The 100% extension here at 134K was obviously a target. This was the sell zone that I drew up from like months and months and months ago, which ranged from like 126K to 153K, something like that. And that for me was kind of like a sell zone. And we reached 126K. Okay. So, I still think we might get one more push to the upside for Bitcoin. And that will possibly be, another 25 to 40% possibly upside for Bitcoin. But I think we are reaching a point where we might be at the end, and when I say that, I don't mean like we're going to be at the end today, but I think people were predicting last year, right? People were predicting, saying that we think the bull market is going to end in around April, May 2026. And to be honest, it's not a terrible prediction. It's actually quite a logical prediction, especially when I look at it on this high level. May 2026 kind of takes us around this timeline here. And we've got this major trend line here, this pink major trend line. And, what we might get is a bit of consolidation, and then, Bitcoin pushes up, gets to that final 150, 170K region. And then obviously that's it. Like, and then we start to break down. And, by maybe late next year, we will be kind of at the start of a possible bear market. I'm making predictions. None of this is guaranteed. This is just based on the data that I'm seeing. This is just based on the chart, the structure of everything. So obviously there's no guarantees at the moment that obviously Bitcoin has topped. And I do still expect one more high. I am still bullish, but I'm only bullish if Bitcoin can hold 90K. Because if Bitcoin drops all the way down and retests 93, 95K and we hold, great. But if we can't hold that, we start breaking 93, we start breaking 90K. I think that's going to be the signal. I think that's going to be the signal to sell our bags and get out of the market. I mean, that's, at the very least, that's what I would be planning on doing if obviously this happens. So, if we take a look at Bitcoin on the lower time frame, At the moment, this kind of just looks like a possible triangle. And if my laptop allows me, I'll try to demonstrate that a little bit more obviously. Um, so this is kind of looking like um, we are forming some kind of triangle. And we could range like this for the next, couple of days. I think maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, we possibly could still just sit in this region before we get, the market to decide where it's going to go. Where does it want to go from there? Does Bitcoin want to break up to the upside and, retest the 110, 112K area and then obviously go down and complete that final low? Because to be honest, this doesn't look complete. This doesn't look complete to the downside. It looks like we have an A wave down, a B wave up, but the C wave doesn't look complete. Like for me, it just doesn't really look. It doesn't look proportionally complete. I would like to see a move, something along the lines like that, and then that's kind of your move down. That's your move down. This is where alts would possibly also form their lows. Wherever Bitcoin obviously is at 95K or something like that, then obviously alts might form their lows at that point. And then we can recover. We would have a really good entry at this point because we do have, obviously we are still in the Bitcoin long, but obviously we're just slightly in it. We've not got a large position. We've not got all of our position size executed. So it would be really nice to get some fills on here, but as I said, and I warn, break below this region here, break below stop loss. For me, that's like game over basically. But this is going to be like a few month hold if we do get our fills and if we do hold that key support region. This is possibly going to be something we hold for the next 2-3 months, maybe even 4-5 months. But we'll see how that goes. I don't think there's too much more to say on Bitcoin at the moment, so hopefully that gives like a really good summary of how I see Bitcoin performing at the moment. So let's talk about Ethereum, because Ethereum also is looking quite interesting at the moment. And I do think it also isn't complete to the downside. I think it's still possibly got a little bit more room to move down. We might get another retest of the trend line here, the upper trend line. That is kind of around like 3,800, 3,900. We might get a test of that trend line, but I still do believe that we might go slightly lower on Ethereum, maybe not hugely lower, but we might get something like this. So yeah, we might get kind of like a touch of that trend line, maybe even like a quick break above, a break back above again around the $4,000 region. But yeah, I do think that it would look better if we're going to continue this upside momentum to like, $6,000, $7,000 Ethereum. I think it would look better if we corrected all the way to, 3,000, just under basically $2,800 dollars. Because, we would basically fill in this gap here that we have. And, again, the market, none of this looks impulsive to the upside. We don't look like we're immediately turning around and we're going to just fly to the upside. It just doesn't look like that right now. So we had this like 3-wave move, and this still is a 3-wave move. I could probably label it as an ABC structure. So this obviously looks like, to me, A wave up, B wave down, C wave up. in a 1, 2, 3 structure where we could be forming a fourth wave and a fifth wave. But obviously the fourth wave obviously also looks like it could be an ABC to the downside. So we could get something like this: B wave, C wave. I don't know if the B wave is going to be that high. Again, it might just kind of come to the trend line, and then we obviously get a C wave to the downside. So this is kind of my primary position that I see Ethereum completing. The alternative is obviously that we just break below that A wave low and make one more low, like in the immediate future. But I think I'd like to see a little bit more of a rally. But I mean, if we don't get it, we don't get it. But again, with Ethereum, for me, this $2,500 level has to hold if we're going to continue upside to $7,000, $8,000 Ethereum. Obviously, formal invalidation would be below the previous swing low here, the previous wave 2 swing low, because you don't want to see a wave 4 go below the wave 2 low. It just doesn't make sense. That is a massive sign of weakness, and it's basically invalidation. So you basically would want to see it hold this $2,000 region, but preferably we don't really break below $2,500. But it would be nice if Ethereum got to about $2,700, $2,800. I think that would be a golden buy zone to hold for the next few months, to hold Ethereum to like possibly $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So that I think is pretty much my general view. You can see that obviously Ethereum has been kind of in this triangle for multiple years now. So there is obviously, as I said, a chance that we have this correction, move to around the mid-range of this triangle and then make new highs at around the $7,000 region and break out of that triangle to the upside. But we just need to see evidence of it. We need to see evidence of it. If we were to project and say, okay, well, what if Ethereum did kind of come down to this level here, then the first target is, let me just adjust the fibs. Yeah. So yeah, first target is around $6,300, and then the next big target would be around $7,700. But again, this is kind of depending on where we form this low. If we form a low here at around $2,500, then the 100% fib takes us to around $6,000, etc., etc. So it all kind of depends where we form the low. Again, I don't know if the low is in. I don't think it's in. We haven't really seen any impulsive price action. We haven't seen any solid 5-wave moves up at the moment. So I personally am remaining cautious, even if we do get a little bit of a rally. I am just remaining cautious at the moment and seeing what opportunities we get given. So one thing I think we need to not forget about, which I talk about basically almost every stream, I probably bore you guys to death talking about it, is USDT dominance. Now, I've said this before, I'll say again, USDT dominance obviously has been looking very, very bullish. I am quite worried about how bullish it looks, personally. We had this trend line that, we hadn't broke out of for quite some time. This is literally from September 2023. I've taken this trend line. We broke out of it briefly, but didn't really have a proper close. And then kind of here you can see with that capitulation event that we had essentially on the 10th of October, we momentarily broke out of that trend line, but we never really recovered. Alts never really recovered. Bitcoin recovered to some extent, but we never really kind of drove USDT dominance all the way back down towards that 3.77% support that we want to see broken for an official alt season to occur. And what we have seen is we've seen USDT dominance just push higher. We've seen it break past this trend line, and I mean, for me, it's a little bit concerning. Like I won't lie, it is a little bit concerning at the moment, and maybe as well as this trend line, you can say, well, maybe we've got some kind of possible triangle going on for USDT dominance. If we possibly like draw it like this, you can say, okay, maybe this is a triangle. It's like an A, B, C, D, E, and then we break up to the upside. And if we do that, that's kind of bad for alts and for Bitcoin and everything else, right? So yeah, I mean, this is definitely something I'd be very cautious about. And, it's very hard to take longs on alts at the moment when you have USDT dominance looking the way it does right now. Like for me, it's just super, super dangerous. Before I'd even want to start considering, okay, maybe we're golden and we're going to have alt season. I wouldn't really want to trade anything until we actually get below that trend line again and we start kind of breaking below these lows here at around 4.2%. Until we do that, nothing looks too reliable at the moment, which is why you've not probably seen a lot of trades from me, because I'm just being cautious that the market is kind of slightly on shaky legs at the moment, and we need to just see what's happening. Now I know that obviously, people are talking about ZEC, which is Zcash or Zcash, however you want to say it. Some people have been waiting years for this thing to move, and it's moved substantially, and obviously everyone's like, okay, that's it, we're literally gonna have alt season, like it's literally here. Don't get me wrong, like this is nice what Zcash did. I wasn't following it personally, but it is what it is, right? But I wasn't following it personally, but we basically got like basically a 10x. So Zcash 10x from here. But this is, I'm just trying to point out of an example here. These are examples of alts that are popping off that we've not really heard too much about. They've kind of just been fairly quiet under the hood kind of thing. And we're starting to see these alts pop a little bit, and it's optimistic, but what's going to be like the real test is obviously if they're going to be able to hold a pullback, right? Like we can see with ICP. ICP has been one to watch as well. It formed a new low, an all-time low on that 10th of October capitulation event. And then we had this really nice recovery. But again, if you look at it on the lower time frame, but I'll keep it in weekly at the moment, this is a three-wave move to the upside. And yes, obviously it is quite a strong three-wave move. Like we literally did like a 4x. But again, it's a three-wave move. This to me still looks corrective. This still looks corrective. And I think, what might be good is, we watch ICP for instance, as an example, it's touched this trend line. It's broken above these previous weekly highs here. And I think once it comes down to retest them at around $6.5, maybe slightly lower at $6, I think it's very important that ICP, for instance, holds that level, because I think if it doesn't hold that level and we start dropping below $6 or below $5, it starts to look like it was just simply a three-wave rally, a three-wave corrective rally, and we're going to either form a new low or we're going to come back down to just kind of form more of a flat correction. where we come down to around the same region as this previous low here at around $3. Which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I think that would kind of be, another attempt. So you can kind of jump in at that point to make another attempt and see if we can push higher again. But, in terms of confirmation, I always say this, we need to see a 5-wave move up. And if we don't see a 5-wave move up to the upside, there is no guaranteed confirmation that we will be going up. I mean, there's never any guaranteed confirmation, but having a 5-wave move is basically your first major indication that we are going to get more upside after a 3-wave pullback that we see. So this is just like, this is something I just want to point out, same with Fetch AI, right? Like, I've been cussing down Fetch AI since the dawn of time. And, I remember trading this when it was like, $1.50, like a few months ago. Maybe not a few months ago, like 4 or 5 months ago. It was something like that. And now obviously it's like massively dropped, and it got to, the 20-cent region, which would have been probably a decent buy. I just kind of stopped watching it to some degree at that point, because it was just what I didn't like about Fetch AI at this point. And if you look at this with me, is that we had this kind of channel that we've been in for the past 5 years, that we've broken out of. And what's ironic here is you can see that, we came down to this level of where we have some volume or some activity that we've seen in the past, past couple of years ago. We can see that there was some activity here around the 20 to 25, 30 cent region. We came back down below. In fact, on that capitulation event, we actually wicked below. Funny enough, we actually filled in that fair value gap that we had. But we filled in that gap at around 10 cents. Came back up. So, but the recovery was weak. I'm not going to lie, it was weak. And then we kind of hovered around this region here. But you can see we have essentially retested that weekly trend line that we've broken out of, and we've obviously got rejected. So, what could happen is we could possibly come down lower, form again a flat correction. So we get to around 20-25 cents and form a flat correction on Fetch AI, and then attempt to make another attempt to break that trend line and go back into it. And then obviously at that point, there could be a chance that, we possibly do something like this, push back up, and then we possibly, could push up to the races at that point. And, this could essentially just be a deviation below our weekly trend line. So, there's a lot to watch at the moment. As I said, I'm not in any long specifically. I think for instance, with Fetch AI, I think we do get back down to these levels if it can't hold this region here, this 20, 31 cent region. I think if we don't hold that level that we've kind of flipped here, and we break down from it, I think that will send us back down to the 20-25 cent region again, for another retest. So, that's pretty much what I'm seeing on most alts at the moment. Some obviously look a little bit stronger than others. I know that Sui got wrecked. I know that HBAR kind of suffered a little bit as well. Doge was another one that I'm kind of watching in the background. I would still love in this bull cycle to see Doge get to like 46, 48 cents. I think that's kind of, I think that's kind of where I want to see Doge get to. And I was planning on possibly taking this long. But again, what we see is we just see a 3-wave move. This is literally just a 3-wave move. And until we see a 4-5, where we, positively could break above this, 20 cent region, if we get that 5 waves up and then we kind of wait for like a wave, a 3-wave pullback, so essentially a wave 2, where this would be like a wave 1, wave 2, and then we'd obviously have the third wave would be our largest, most aggressive wave. If we get something like that, then yeah, 100% this is going to be an awesome thing to trade, but we just don't have confirmation yet. Everything is kind of formed 3-wave moves. Even the most aggressive, like impulsive, even though, you can argue is impulsive, but the third wave you're seeing in this initial first wave looks quite impulsive on a lot of charts. It pushes quite high. It pushes past like the 100%, 1.382, even 1.618 fib extension. But you need to have that fourth wave pullback and hold that fourth wave pullback and push a couple of fib levels higher than the third wave that was made to form that fifth wave. That's what you want to see. We haven't seen that at the moment. And we might see it next week. But this is why I'm not aping into any trades at the moment. I know a lot of people trade the third wave of the first wave, which is, what probably some analysts have done in the past couple of days. They've taken like some long trades for that. But for me, the most lucrative is going to be that 1-2 setup that we get, where we take the large third wave as something that we ride. And that has the most RR, and that has the least risk. So, I think there's probably not too much more to say about the general sentiment of the market. I think people are still cautious about what happened on the 10th of October. I think we still can get a final push. And if we do get a final push, I think we do see that final push happen in the next, 3 to 6 months. But I think at that point, we need to start being a little bit more realistic about our expectations of what we expect to see when it comes to all of these altcoins. A lot of these altcoins, they're not going to get back to where they originally got. For instance, we've got some coins like Gala or Mana or Sand, etc. All of these coins, AVAX might be a possible example. There's just a lot that I think might not get back to where they once were a few years ago in the previous bull cycle. So I think we need to just bear that in mind and just be realistic about our expectations. But there's still obviously money to be made. Some of these things can still technically 3-4x, and we need to just take advantage of that. But we need to obviously be careful. Number one, of obviously the volatility. Number two, of the fact that Bitcoin is very close, in my opinion, to topping. And number three, leverage trading. Needs to be very, very careful with leverage trading. We saw what happened on the 10th of October. A lot of us got wrecked. A lot of people got liquidated. And, I think it is good to either play a lot of these trades on very low leverage or just spot. And, I know some people might not have quite a large port and, it'll take some time, but it ultimately is the safest way to play the market. A lot of this, it's not a race. They say it's a marathon, not a race. And I think that applies heavily to crypto. And I think, we all should kind of take heed to that and just be careful that this is something that we need to watch out for. So I'm probably going to leave it there. Hopefully that was useful. This is recorded, so I'll upload it onto YouTube just for anyone who obviously isn't here. They can obviously watch this later, but that's kind of my general overview. So yeah, main advice, just kind of sit tight right now. Don't go crazy into trades. Watch the market. We've got those levels to watch on Bitcoin that we're watching for. And we've got levels to watch on altcoins to see if they can hold this pullback to form a fifth wave up, because as I said, a lot of them are 3-wave moves at the moment. And just sit tight, don't overtrade, preserve your capital. Risk management is key, and that is probably the most that I could say right now. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Just basically stay safe, and I will keep you posted in the chat. Peace out.